So it's 5 years and 3 months and 2 days since I started a new job in the UK civil service. And on my first day, a note arrived from the Prime Minister's office saying the Prime Minister has been talking to Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web. Sir Tim Berners-Lee has been talking about open data. The Prime Minister and the Prime Minister said we'd do something about open data, but he wasn't quite sure what it was. So could you do a plan for him to do something with open data and get going? And luckily, I've been doing work on open data for about 2 years under the radar. And the Prime Minister's office said there's no particular urgency about this. Something by close of business today will be quite soon enough. Thank you very much. So I wrote a plan for what became based on UK and worked in the UK civil service and done a lot of work for the World Bank in various countries. So I wanted to share some experience with that. And I want to talk particularly about data rather than open. The value of data is in its use. And simple mathematics says, the more it's used, the more value you get. And so we need to think as open, not as something to be evangelical about, but open is a mechanism for getting the data used more, for getting more innovation from the data, and it's just a mechanism for getting that more value out. So what have been the big lessons on how to get value from data? I think one is that governments who have just said we need an open data portal, we need to do something on open data, and they put boring, uninteresting, easy to publish data on a website and they've done it, have not got any value from that. The governments that have really got value from their data have had a particular policy objective or policy objectives in mind. Some have been driven very much by creating new economic and social value. The Minister mentioned McKinsey's figure of $3 trillion a year worldwide as a big prize. The UK government certainly thinks that figure, the UK share of that would be much lower. But there's definitely businesses there. We're now seeing billion-dollar businesses being bought and sold that didn't exist 10 years ago and have been powered by actually taking government data and applying innovation to that. Companies like Climate Corp, Zillow, and Zoopla, and so on. So some governments are really aiming at what's the economic and social value of that. Some governments are doing this for transparency and for practical transparency. A lot of governments have right to information acts. Most are not as good as that as India. But open data has been more, it's not just about accessibility, it's also about reuse. So it's allowing that data to be mined. And in the UK, to find the individual bureaucrats who authorised going a conference at a race course on a racing day, and what was the justification of that? Since in the UK, the expenses of every individual senior civil servant and which journey they made and how much they charged have been published, the amount of expenses claimed has gone down by 40%. So it's actually because people can mine that data and officials know that can be mined. So that's been a driver. Very important driver, and I think this is very important to the rural development agenda here, is improving public services. And the Minister talked about empowering people, and I'll give some examples of that. And finally, it's also about getting more efficient government. As data is being made open, it's on the website, actually it can be used elsewhere in government. And I'll give some examples of where open data, whatever it is done for economic value and transparency and improving public services, has actually been paid for itself as a good investment just in government efficiency itself. So open data can help public policy and service delivery. And this is an example from Uganda in the area of rural health. the government of Uganda supplied data to rural villages on what health services were supposed to be provided in that village, and what the local performance of the health service was. And they also put effort, they didn't just give them data, but they also put effort into community building and community activism there. And as a result, mothers started to question the district nurse when the nurse came to visit, saying, well, aren't you supposed to be here every week? And we've only seen you once, we haven't seen you for 6 weeks. This mother started to say, isn't my child supposed to have had these inoculations by now? As a result, there were greater reduction in absenteeism, greater uptake of the services the government was funding, and the immunisation of waiting times. And the bottom line of this was that there was a 33% reduction in mortality of under fives, basically because they were getting the healthcare that the government was funding, and particularly the inoculation programs were being done. So a very practical result by supplying some data and putting some active support into empowering the villagers themselves to use that, to create a bottom-up pressure for improvement, as well as the top-down pressure from the central government. This is an urban example, but can show what's being done, and this is a project that the World Bank have been associated with in the Kibera slum in Nairobi. On the left-hand side, this is the view as seen by Google Maps, where there is a great blank space. And actually by open data through OpenStreetMaps and community mapping, that space is being filled in. Where are the water points, where are the latrines, and so on. So that's actually using open data and feeding it back to help planning action in that slum. A very important driver for value is that governments tend to have a lot of reference information, mapping information, registers of companies, addresses, weather information, and so on. And making that data available firstly throughout government, and then to businesses and communities, allows more efficient services, and it also allows others to attach data to that reference data. Because essentially, the government makes a national information infrastructure, and that's been shown to give a lot of value. And it's been a base for the contribution of citizen source data. So if you have roads, then people can report congestion or problems on those roads. But you need a database of roads in order to be able to report which road is at fault. As I said, there's additional value to the better use of data in government. This is a province in Spain, where as part of an open data initiative, they catalogued all the geospatial data they had. And they found that the savings within the government itself of being able to find their own information and be able to use it effectively paid for the investment within 6 months. So actually they got an 8-to-1 return on that investment. Data doesn't know what it's for. And one of the things we found about releasing data is that people think of innovations to use that data that we hadn't envisaged. So in the UK, as part of a transparency initiative, we released these details of individual payments to suppliers, including payments to Newmarket Racecourse, that were made by individual government departments. And this company, Spikes Cavell, took this data, they cleaned it up. The government didn't have it. Each department coded suppliers in a different way. So they, Spikes Cavell recoded it so you could find out how much was being paid to IBM, how much was being paid to TCS, and so on. And they converted this into business intelligence to suppliers to government. So which department was buying which goods from which suppliers at which price, and that led to a more competitive market in supply to government, lower prices to government. And we hadn't envisaged that at all. We'd seen publishing this spending data as just a matter of transparency. And someone actually built a business out of the place. And there's a similar example in Brazil about unreliable government contractors. They publish that data, and of course that's valuable to other businesses to know who are unreliable contractors. And this is very much an urban example for which I apologise, but it's a consistent story. In cities, transport is very important to people, and a lot of people move about and want to know about the state of the transport system, to optimise their journeys day by day. So, in a whole range of cities, London, Madrid, New York, St. Petersburg, we've found, as data's been released, an explosion in the number of applications. So with data, you just don't get one application. We've seen 20, 30, 60, in London, 500 applications. As the market responds to the data's there, how can we innovate different services? I've got 3 London transport applications on my mobile phone, because each of them is a bit different. One of them is very good at saying when the next metro train is going to come. One of them is better at telling me where to stand on the platform, so I'm at the right place when I get to the station that I'm going to, and there's a bus application as well. So as you open the data, more actors come in. People come in and innovate new ways of doing that. The ultimate users of the data, be them people or other businesses, have a variety of services, and they can pick the one that best suits their needs. One size doesn't always fit all, and particularly one government size doesn't always fit all. So in London, the transport authority have actually stopped doing their own applications. They say, well, there are 500 that other people are doing. Why should we pay for one? We're very unlikely to be able to make one better than all of those 500. Combining data. And this is one of, government is often in silence. And when the data is published, people start to make connections. And this is Irene Chogi, a data journalist with a TV station in Kenya, who's actually a graduate of a World Bank data journalism boot camp. And based on what she learned, she started to think about why girls underachieve in rural Kenyan schools. And she took the data from the education system and saw that actually their underachievement was linked to underattendance. The girls underachieve because they don't actually they stop attending school. Why do they stop attending school? So she started to investigate that, and girls relatively, or boys stop attending schools because the toilet facilities are unacceptable and they prefer to stay at home. And so why are the toilet facilities so poor? What is being spent? What is provided for maintenance? And there was a budget for maintenance, and she tracks down that the budget is not actually being spent on the maintenance of the schools as it should be. So that actually linking data on budgets, data on health, data on school performance makes a story and starts to drive change, get political momentum behind that. Opening data means that the data is used much more, and this is quite. You think you open it and it will be used little. This is a case study of the statistics agency in Germany, who used to charge for their data, and they changed their policy in 2008 and made it free to download. And almost immediately there was an explosion in the use of that data. The number of downloads went up by 800%. The users of the data actually went up by 1800%. And this example came from a study that was done in the European Union by Deloitte, which pointed out that the number of users in all the cases they looked at went up by a factor of 10 to a factor of 100. There was much more reuse. What's more, the data was being reused by a different type of company and users, in particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, startups were actually getting access to the data because they didn't have to pay up front for the data, and they could explore the data without and find new innovative uses for it without actually having to commit money to start. And they also found that as governments organised and publishing the data became routine, it actually didn't add to the costs of government. We're seeing a whole range of open data businesses being tracked in the United States. There's something called the Open Data 500 where they're tracking 500 businesses that are using open data and investigating those characteristics. We're tracking about 250 in the UK. And there are some different business models starting to emerge. One business model is aggregating data. So data's on different government websites. It's sometimes organised by the structure of government rather than the structure of use. So there are companies like Data Publica in France who run data from all sorts of sources and become a one-stop shop for businesses who want to use data. In the UK, there's a company called Placer who are a one-stop shop for transport information. So for Heathrow Airport, for ground transportation at Heathrow Airport, which are roads, rail, metro, buses, Heathrow Airport used Placer to consolidate all that information for them, to provide a single integrated information service to passengers. There's a whole range of developers making applications using that data, creating employment in that, innovating uses of that data, and often catering to overlapping, catering to different niches, competing for audience attention of those who want to do things with data. The companies that are probably making the most money out of data are those that take the data and apply analytics and smarts to that, and then provide a value-added service, advisory service, or sometimes a financial service. So Climate Corporation started in 2006, basically uses, initially focused in the United States. It took free weather data for several decades, 1 million observation points in the United States. It took 60 years worth of crop yield data, farm by farm in the United States, and it took 14 terabytes of soil quality data. And they used big data analytics on that to be able to model which variety of which plant, which crop, in which field would give what yield, and advise and start advising the farmers that this would be a better variety of crops, or why don't they switch to this other crop which would make them more money. And they offered crop insurance with that, guaranteeing a minimum income, because they could model that insurance with all the climate data, and they knew the variability. And they were bought out for $930 million by Monsanto. And they're also enablers. There's a whole ecosystem of people providing data services. Firms making a business out of that, like Socrata and like Cloudera. So which data is most valuable, most widely valuable? Census and other detailed statistics are very valuable. In the UK, it's estimated that the census is worth £300 million a year to businesses alone. That alone is value for planning public services and the like. So that's £3 billion for every 10-year census. And the more detailed, the more valuable the data is. Maps of geospatial data, I think it's estimated that 80% of government data has some geospatial reference in it, in a latitude, longitude, or a name of a place or an administrative area. So be able to plot it on the map and use actually often geospatial data to tie data on health, data on agriculture, data and education together can be very, very, very powerful. Addresses and data on property and who owns what, also very, very valuable. In Denmark,